Yeah.
Yeah.
It's time to get nasty. This is the nasty show.
It is. And we've made it through our countdown. Thanks for joining us. If you're watching on Facebook, We Are Live. Chris Denman, Travis Terrell, very special guest today that I'll tell you about in just a second. I'm going to pay some bills real quick. Get online. Go to barrelbeardandtattoo.com. Great sponsor of ours. Barrel Beard and Tattoo Oil. Great for your skin. Great for your hair. Also, neovitin.com. That's right. We have a multivitamin sponsor. And more importantly, we're joined in studio at Gaslight by the great Rachel Feinstein. Good morning, Rachel.
Thank you. It's Rachel Feinstein. How dare you?
I say Steen because I like to accentuate I guess, the nature of where it comes from. Other stations in town don't care for your types, I've been told.
No. We got one piece of press was canceled this morning, and I quote, because they said they don't care for Jews. Never cared for Jews.
Damn you, PBS.
Yeah. I don't know why your publicist set you up with all those alt-right podcasts, but yeah, so good to have you back.
To have her, but
yeah, well, you know, the whole Jew thing, right?
Yes, we just couldn't quite. They didn't want another snout in the studio. That's what they called me, a snout. And I am not a snout. I'm more than a snout.
It's a new term.
I'm a woman.
Good for you. You came in from New York. You had a big New Year's in New Orleans with the great Ani DiFranco. Would not have expected that with yourself and Amy Schumer doing comedy. You bring in Ani DiFranco.
Yes, that was Amy's favorite from high school. So her and her sister came out and they watched together by the stage, and it was very adorable.
I love that.
Big Ani DiFranco high school fan, and Ani DiFranco was really lovely and sweet. And Hannibal Buress was on the show, and Al Jackson and Vanessa Bayer, and
oh wow,
yeah, it was great.
Did you bring them to St. Louis?
Good fun after. And Jennifer Coolidge threw this crazy party at this house she has in New Orleans, and it's this beautiful old house. They perform. I mean, they taped some of, I think, American Horror Story or something like that.
Dope.
There, I think it was I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Exciting. So you've been busy this morning. You're at Funny Bone this weekend. So if you guys are around, I highly recommend it. Last time Rachel was in town, like a year and a half ago, something around that, I went and saw like a set and a half of yours, great crowds, and a really enjoyable experience. So not only stand-up, very funny. We've been seeing you. You're crashing regularly now. Obviously, you've had a bunch of movie parts. I feel like there's a nice swell behind you in your career right now. Yeah, you worked so hard for a while now.
I just want to make it in show business. That's all I've ever wanted.
Have you noticed an uptick at the live shows from Crashing or any of your other projects?
It's hard to know why people are there.
Right,
you know?
Yeah. Because you have
people have no idea
yourself.
who I am.
Right.
That's for sure. One guy just like literally fell asleep slowly in the middle of my show. I was in Vegas and I just watched him. He came in and gifted himself with a nice sweet nap. I just watched his head kind of sway a little and then finally fall.
Did you change your material up at all to try to snap him back into it?
It hurt. It hurt like hell. Nothing was going to get him. He wasn't interested. I called on him a couple times to wake up, and he was kind of like, enough. Like he didn't care for me.
like you bothered him.
He scolded me. Yeah. He was like, all right. Stop whining.
I don't usually yell at guests, but it's really fucking rude for you to bring up Travis's Vegas trip on our show now. I mean, he was a little disrespectful to you.
Speaking of blowing hookers, Travis.
Yeah. We did. Travis, you were in charge of the blow and hookers. That did not happen today for Rachel. Would you like to apologize?
I'm a Christian boy, man. I don't mess with that shit anymore.
You were just talking about this. You and Beth are one of our favorites. We're driving around, rocking out to your playlist. Let's get into this a little bit. Hip hop on the playlist in the car. What are you going with?
Yes, I've got some good 90s hip hop. I have some from 3 Feet High and Rising. I love that album, and the Low End Theory. But the stuff we listened to was like Creedence and Johnny Cash. Love Johnny Cash.
Sure.
John Prine.
Look at you.
Yeah, I like
That's a
the
deep
old
cut.
stuff.
But what's the mood? Like, I feel like those are
We were falling
moods.
in love. That was the mood. Beth and I are in love.
This is quite different. On our morning show, we did half
ignoring me right now.
She's like, yeah, cute. On the morning show this morning, we did half an hour on Yacht Rock, which is the exact opposite of your actual quality playlist too. So
thank you.
We're trying to figure this out. Do you feel a Yacht Rock party in February is appropriate in St. Louis, Missouri? We're trying to put this together.
Is there such thing as appropriate in St. Louis? I'd say this town is off the chain. Like my show's at the St. Louis Funny Bone. Everyone come. I'm alone in life.
How are you still? Are you single? Are you dating? What's going on?
I actually have a boyfriend. I just like to announce that.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a certain way, we're all alone in life. I just wake up at 3 a.m.
Yeah. Travis is going to walk out of the studio now. Yeah.
Just because, that kind of, that sting you get from alcohol that wakes you up suddenly.
Yes.
And I just scream, I'm alone in life. Come have wings with me at the St. Louis Funny Bone.
Let's turn the last
But yes,
10
I
minutes
do.
of
I
that.
have a boyfriend.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we made the playlist together. Yeah, I called it, he's a fireman, so I called it playlist Behind the Fire.
Oh my gosh.
I like to joke that he has like a TV show called Behind the Fire. Like, I'm Pete. I'll take you behind the fire. Come along. But he's just not wearing pants or underwear, but he has like the top half of a fireman.
Right. Is this a true TV pickup at National Geographic?
I just
what station do we take
I just
it to?
narrate this when we're like laying around in bed. I'm like, hey, I'm Captain Pete. I'm going to take you behind the fire. Some have some fire-based questions.
No, firefighters are
not-
matter-of-fact guys. How does that work? Because I would imagine some have sense of humors, but I'm
He's
sure
like he's a playful person. It's harder for him to be serious than joking. They're all like, they're kind of like comics. They're a bunch of idiots. Like, they all live in the
They
same
have
house
substance
together.
abuse issues? Like, what?
I mean, they all their lives are ridiculous like ours, except they also save people's lives and they're
Right.
heroes or whatever. But
Does he throw that in your
they do
face?
something heroic and real. But they also are like kids, like they live in this house together for a couple days a week and, talk smack and say like filthy, despicable things to each other the way comics do.
Right.
Absolutely.
They're kind of like us in certain ways. And you know how like when a non-comic walks up to the table, we'll be like, oh, there's a civilian coming out. That's kind of how it is at the firehouse, Like a regular person walks out.
Does he throw his career in your face like, hey, I saved a meth head teenager at a burning fire today. I see you made a couple kids.
When we first started dating, he would like text me each time he had a call. Like he would text me almost with the same like jargon as if he was calling it on the radio. So he'd be like, I got a private dwelling, and he'd be like, or he would just say the name of the fire. Like he'd be like, I got a 1075 private dwelling fire on all floors fire throughout. I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do with this information. Yeah, I'm just laying in my stomach in Toledo having macaroni and cheese right now. But
A little peek behind the curtain for the glamorous lifestyle of a TV, movie, and comedy star, Rachel Feinstein. Yeah.
But yeah, he would call in the fires as if he was calling him in on the radio. And then, but no, they all joke around. They're ridiculous. But I try to get him to talk about something serious,
Right.
and that's harder for him. Like if I want to talk about like an emotional thing, I'll be like, we're having feelings corner on the bed. And I'd be like, oh no, feelings corner. I'll go into a burning building, but he like is terrified of feelings corner.
Turning up the heat
I'm
emotionally.
like, I want to discuss something, feelings corner. He's like, oh babe, come on, no, feelings corner, please.
I had talked about, and sorry to pivot away from fire talk, but we chatted just briefly about crashing. I know Greg Fitzsimmons writes for that. I respect the hell out of him.
Love Greg Fitzsimmons.
Obviously,
He's so funny.
Isn't he? Yeah, he's great too. So he works on that show. If you just watch the show, first off, it's on HBO, so immediately people are going to be, okay, I trust that, right? Judd Apatow is part of it. You have Pete Holmes headlining it, but every single time you turn that show on, you can see, I don't know, 10, 15 comics that are out touring all the time. I guess as far as having done so much that you have, what's the experience been like diving in on this? Is your role going to expand on the show? I mean, do you want it to? What's it mean to you, I guess, career-wise?
I don't know if it's going to expand or what I don't know what their plans are for me, but I play myself. I got to know Apatow when I did a scene in Trainwreck, and I did Punch Up on Trainwreck, so I was sort of on set for that summer, and Apatow was doing spots at the Comedy Cellar, so we were all kind of hanging out, so that's how I got to know him, and then somebody called me to audition for Crash. My agent called me to do an audition for Crashing, and I didn't want to go at first because I was like working on a pilot, and I felt like I was going to go in and not be good enough, and I was like, Apatow has a positive memory. I just want to leave it at that. And not,
That's terrible. You're so
soil
talented.
that,
Yeah, I hate
but
that.
it's such a bad instinct. But I was like, no, I just want to leave things without actively embarrassing myself in front of anyone. But they're like, no, just go. And so Artie was in my audition. And
Nice.
and Big J Okerson,
Yeah.
who I know really well. So I know those guys. And when I went in, they just kind of had us improvise.
Right.
So I was like, oh, thank God I went. Because if I can improvise, if I can just do it myself, I'll be okay. If I have to stick to the lines, a lot of auditions, I'm terrible. And I feel like I've left, not just being awful, but like I've left a mess in the room for them to clean up, you know, like they seem
like
angry.
wash the taste out of their mouth
they
afterwards.
seem, I soil the place. Yeah. And then, but Artie was so sweet. And afterwards he like walked me to the elevator to talk about it. Artie's just like such a doll. I love him so much.
How's he doing?
He was so cool. He's sober right now. I think, I don't want to speak for how many days his sobriety, but I think it was like a little over a month. So
that's good.
Yeah. So it was really good to see him back at the cellar. And yeah, anyway, so that's how I ended up doing the show. And the part is myself. So I'm Rachel. Yeah.
There's a lot to explore there. I hope they expand that because, again, super talented. And I love seeing you be a part of it. I literally, like, every time I see you pop up in something, I'm like, here she goes. Here she goes. Like, you guys, it's such a fine line between, you have headliner status, which is a big deal in your world. You're touring all over the time, all over the place. You get to perform in front of so many people. And then the TV aspect comes in. And I always wish that for good people that come through, just like, please let this work where you can just be comfortable to make creative choices and do things that you love. And you're still going to get out and tear it up on the road, too.
That's all I want.
Yeah.
In this here life. You've just explained it all for me.
Well, I'm very good at that. I like to mansplain everything to our to our super talented guests.
When you're in a writer's room, like when you're working on Trainwreck, or of course with Crashing, or even like when you did your show for New Year's Eve in New Orleans, when you're around so many talented people, is it like a game of double dutch as far as when you guys are interacting, or when you're trying to come up with future material? How does that work? Do you guys bounce things off each other? Do you guys, or you've been around each other for so long, you know each other on a personal level, you're more comfortable being each other, you're not really...
For my stand-up, usually a lot of it starts out with a story, something that happens to me. I'm more of a storyteller, so I'll tell it to my close friends who are all comics, and Schumer and Nikki Glazer, who's from St. Louis, so I tell it, or Marina Franklin, or Bridget Everett. So I talk to other comics and say something that I'm thinking, like vent about a story, usually some weird, humiliating thing that happened to me. And they're like, you should say that on stage, or you should try that on stage. Right. As a stand-up, like, you take all the awful things that happen to you and they become material. So it's like this bin you can place all your heinous, strange, jarring experiences. So sometimes you initially just vent to your friends who are comics, and like, do it on stage. And I'm like, yeah, it is fun. I guess you're right. It's funny.
Is it a fine line for them to be objective and also a friend? I would imagine, at least early on, there probably was a moment where, as a friend, I want to be nice. At the same time, I know in order for you to become better, maybe they had some advice.
We say stuff to each other. Like, it's very helpful. They'll be like, no, because the audience will cringe if you say that. Say it like this, or we help each other out. Yeah,
that's really cool feedback.
Yeah, because usually it doesn't start like, hey, is this funny? It starts like you're just telling them something, and they're like, wait, you should say that on stage, and then they kind of, but how would I explain it? Like, and they help you kind of frame it or whatever, So we're pretty honest, I think, with each other, and it's helpful. Yeah. So that's how most stuff starts. And in writers' rooms, I haven't been a writer on that many shows, like for my own like pilots and things like that. But I get like more shy in those situations. If they're my friends and I know them, then I'll bring up ideas, but I'm always like, it always feels like school, and I was a terrible student, so I'm always like, I can't do that.
So as far as what you feel more comfortable in, you would prefer working on your own material, as far as, because I know you mentioned you working on your pilot, being in a writer's room.
That's different with it because it's my pilot, so it's like I'm just hanging out with my friends, and and I still always, though, feel like I'm, playing pretend, and I'm not a real adult.
I love that because you're a very smart person, but you can also take that peak from where you're sitting, too, where you're like, yeah, I get to do this for a living, and you get to take these chances, but it could mean so many different things for you, career-wise, lifestyle-wise, with all these opportunities that present themselves. Like, it's an interesting place to be.
Yeah, it's scary.
Does it ever get competitive, though? I always feel like I'm a competitive person myself, but I always feel like...
No, she gets wins, though. That's the difference.
That is very true.
She does.
But as far as like, is there ever a moment, and I'm sure you're excited for your friend's success, but is there ever a moment, do you measure where you are to anyone else in your circle, or
I think everybody does that to some extent, but then the thing is, you have moments of maybe feeling... like envious of this or that thing that somebody did. But at the end, at the end of the day, which is how I start most of my sentences, but your friends are all helping each other.
Right.
So all the work I get is from my friends. So you can't really stay jealous of anything for very long because everything I get is from my friends.
That's so true too. Where it's just like, well, these are all a bunch of people who've worked hard and struggled together. So of course, there's going to be opportunities that open up whenever you sell a pilot or something gets greenlit.
Absolutely everything I've ever done is just comics putting me in things. So it's like, it's funny because there's this reputation with stand-up that it's so like cutthroat.
Right.
But it's actually like...
There are teams I've noticed.
Sure, there's people do.
Yeah.
I mean, people are no more fucked up than any other walk of life. And actually, comics are like, they've gotten me everything I've ever had. So, and if anything ever happens to a comic, nobody raises money faster than comics for each other. The comics that have no health insurance or no anything are always the first person to give you $100 if somebody's in trouble without asking many questions, you know, if anything happens to a comic. So it really is this, you know, weird deranged family, you know, it is.
It's one of my favorite things. Like you literally lived in an apartment with Sherrod Small.
I did.
Like that's like how funny is that apartment?
And he would hook up with girls and they'd have to walk through my room to get to the bathroom, so I'd have these awkward conversations with these girls pulling their t-shirts down, and I felt so bad for them.
Yeah, or you're like, hey, will you not touch my stuff, ma'am? That's what
I was more like, don't touch Sherrod. I was like, I can vouch for him as a friend, but you were making a grave mistake right now.
So we talked to plenty of people. For example, with all the stuff that has happened recently, just things coming to light, Weinstein in particular, our pal Adam Carolla literally was like, saw this coming for 20 years. Up next is another director. Has anything, I guess, surprised you? And we don't have to go super deep on this entire topic, but has anything surprised you, I guess, with whether it's the lights being shown, I guess the public getting behind certain movements? I don't even want to classify it as one movement. It's just, it's in the air and it's out there and it seems to be pushing a certain way. You're literally in the mix of it. You've been in the mix of everything for a little while. I guess, how do you feel about the current climate of whether it's the Me Too movement or just certain people getting outed? And I think there's been different levels of people getting outed, but I guess being right in the mix of everything, what's that like to, I guess, experience it from that?
Entirely surprised, of course. The Harvey Weinstein thing, I mean, this guy is just wildly raping and abusing. And that was, I didn't know about that. That was insane that was going on for so many years.
It tips people off when people are just horrible people. And they're like, well, maybe that's what seems to be a common thread where like, that guy was a jerk for so many years. Like,
and obviously just like a really dangerous sociopath that to me should just be in jail for the rest of his life. But there's a lot of
jail's even the right.
I know. I mean, it's like terrifying. But I do hope that the more stories that come out, and then the safer people get to feel, you know, and each generation is like a little safer than the last. And I know. I mean, of course, when I started stand up, I mean, it's already 10 times better than when I started. It used to be if you were like a girl on a show, people would say to you, oh, we already had a lady on the show, like, you know, and they considered it redundant. They didn't even realize like what they were saying to you. It was just like, oh, we already had a lady. We can't have badge. It was just like this very simple thing that nobody apologized for. It was just considered to have two females. They just assume you, I guess you would speak about the exact same things. And I didn't question it myself. Like, oh, you had a girl on. Okay, cool. You know, and these ways that you even think yourself that you don't question. And then just the nonsense that you deal with on the road, and, you know, just the literal danger, active danger that you're in as like a female comic when you're staying in like terrifying places, and they'll send, you know, I was saying before, like any sex offender to go pick you up at the airport. And I mean, so I do think it's getting better, and the more people discuss things that happen to them and share stories that happen to them, the safer it'll be. And I worry more about, I mean, you want it to be better for each group of people, and like it's alarming, you know what?
From a comedic standpoint, though, with the beauty a lot of times with comedians is being able to take the uncomfortable and obviously make it funny. But in this instance, especially when you have, say, in this case, a guy like Louis C.K., a guy that has been so respected in the industry, is it easy, or I guess, what are the challenges for comedians when, one, it's someone that is part of your industry to take that topic and then maybe try to make a routine or material around Like, is there a way you can take what's going on, what we've heard, and make it funny? We've seen Chappelle try it. We saw Seth Meyers do it recently at the Golden Globes. Is it challenging, especially when you're so close to it, when you're trying to?
I mean, it's hard. I take things that are from my own life, my
Right.
own personal experiences, less than other people's abuse. But
Right.
I try to draw more from my own personal experiences. It's always hard sometimes when you know some of these people,
Right.
and you know, it's just it's hard. It's all like, it's a weird, strange time. And I've been treated well by
Right.
some of these guys and not had those experiences. And then you learn somebody else did, and you have to confront that in yourself. Like, all right, that's something else, you know?
Right.
So it's, but I hope that like everybody, from the more people talk about it, people can learn. And I don't think it's all black and white.
Right.
You know, I think that hopefully the more people discuss things, the more people can learn to better their behavior and all that. I said something like on one of these podcasts, I was like, you can't fry them all in the same pan.
Right.
And they all trash me for a good half hour. Because I was like, that's not even an expression. You can't fry them all.
Like, I just came
They're
up
like,
with
oh,
this. You
that
can't get
stinks,
angry.
you know. But sometimes you know other sides to people and you hear things and it's just like, and you just, it's weird. I'm processing it along with everybody else. And, you know, I mean, obviously, it's crazy. It's a really ludicrous time. But I think that the more people talk about it, everything that they're going through, then the better, the safer the environment's going to be for the next group of anybody that has a daughter now is going to grow up a little safer with less rancid things happening to her.
Right.
You know.
As a comedian, do you feel like everything's on the table as far as to joke about? Like, and I know there's a fine line on certain things, and frankly, at the end of the day, it comes down whether or not you're funny or not. But do you think there's, when people say as a comedian everything's on the table, do you believe that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's funny, it's funny, and
Right.
I don't think people should be. It's tricky. Yes, there's certain things people say that you're just like, ugh, that was just kind of
Right.
wrong. But how can you police it until you kind of
Right.
hear it and know how it feels? So I guess I feel both ways. I feel like you should, you know, you don't want to start heavily policing what everybody says and
Right.
and declaring one person as sexist or racist based on one thing that they said.
Right. Which is easy to happen in this day.
It
and
happens
age
all the
with-
time. I'm
all the
scared of it all the time. I'm scared of things that I used to talk about that I realize now I've grown and see things in a different way being held up in front of me. Just
Right.
like because as a comic, it's like all the stages of clumsy, dumb
There's
growth that
evolution,
you
right.
had.
When
Is,
you're trying
yeah.
to work everything out, and then you're taking a feeling or a thought that you've had, and it's it's portrayed this way. And then again, you're right. Age has so much to do with it, and now everything
Yeah.
is on video, on whatever app you're using, whatever else. It's going to feel different. There are things that we're going to talk about here today that if we watch it in 5 years, we'll be like, oh, that was rough. Like, what do we, you know what? It's,
Yeah, and
that's
if
just
you took
typically
the
how things
text
go.
exchanges, like of even me and my group of friends, I think I would
Yeah.
never be allowed to work again. The disgraceful, insane things that we say to each other. But it's tricky because, like, sometimes it's because you have experienced this. It's your way of joking about it, you know,
Yeah.
whether it be like, you know, sexism or racism or some sexual trauma or whatever it is. That's how people joke. That's how my aunts and my grandma would joke about the Holocaust, because it's like anything that's painful.
Right.
You know, Joan Rivers had some quote that I'll mangle, but it was just like, you know, life goes by fast, relax, it's all funny, you know. And I do believe that. I understand that sometimes people say things that you really want to stop and ask them about, like, you know, and I don't think that you can say anything always. I'm sure, I mean, there's moments where people say things that I'm upset by, but I hope there can be a conversation and we don't just decide that one person says something and then they're just not allowed to exist with the rest of us, because nobody
Super
can grow or
important.
learn like that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you end up with just people dictating that. And at the end of the day, you have people running things at the top, and we're always going to make errors and have issues.
Yeah,
and
you
things.
want
It's
people
not-
to be able to have a conscious conversation, because it can't just be like, you're bad, go away forever. I mean, that's childish to me. And it's not just, nobody's going to grow or learn anything or learn to be more like thoughtful or sensitive if that's how we do things. That to me is just it's just kind of disastrous.
Very true.
When it comes to your pilot, can you give us any idea as to what it's about or the direction you're going
have
with
Are
it?
you currently working on one that's like in traction? I mean, what do you?
Yeah, I have a scripted pilot, which is about my personal life and my life as a comic, and also, and my family and all that. And then I have another pilot that's producing with Amy and me and Amy's sister Kim Caramelli, who's a really funny writer and comic. Also wrote on Amy's show, comedy writer. Not stand up. So we're producing something, and it's like my stand-up kind of deconstructed through these little,
nice.
Sketches and man on the street kind of stuff, and
where do you take that?
Camera.
Is it like, I feel like Comedy Central's gotten even better, but you have 10 other options, 20 other options now. I feel like there's more options. Yeah, where
would you want it to go?
Where do you want it? Where do you want this to live?
I don't know. I'm just happy that anybody has. I can't dictate that. I'm not at the point in my life where,
Like, here, Netflix, take it.
Yeah.
Here's how I feel. When I would leave somebody's house when I was a kid, my mom would stand and glare at me on the doorstep until I went around to each person in the house and said, "Thank you for having me."
I love your mom. That's
and
fantastic.
So I had to say that, and that's still how I feel. I'm like, I'm allowed. I can sit here.
Yeah.
So I'm like, anybody that wants to. Yeah, but my friend, actually, her dad, I just saw him recently, one of my best friends growing up, Lisa Kaplan, and I saw her parents, Mr. Kaplan. He was like,
Mr. Kaplan listens to the show.
Les Kaplan, I know you're out there. He always calls me, "Thank you for having me," because he says he'd be in the middle of working in his office, and he'd just see my dumb body standing in the doorway, like, "Thank you for having me, Mr. Kaplan." I'd be like, "All right, sure, whatever."
I noticed that when you walked in, you literally made a point to politely say hello to everyone here. Like guy wiping down a glass, like dude setting up the camera.
That's why the Jewish and black community get along so well, because you can't, as a black person, you can't go into someone else's house and not say thank you for having me.
Is there a
It's
worse?
big,
Is
yeah.
there a worse
You will
kid?
get your
Like
ass kicked.
that I can't stand. Like, just walk in, like take a glass of something, eat something, and walk out. Whoa, no.
Yeah,
Not a
and
thing.
when I called somebody on the phone, I don't know if you had this too, but I had to say, "Hi, this is Rachel. May I please speak with?"
Yo, no doubt. No,
or I was in big trouble.
Well,
I went through a
Travis
phase
says
where-
that you have to be like the tough guy voice. Hello.
Well, that's only in public, and then I realized
okay,
I'm a
gotcha.
softie. But I remember one time I went through a terrible phase where I would call my mother by her first name, and I remember. Well, I don't remember much. 'Cause I swear I got a concussion from my uncles and stepfather and everybody from that. But yeah, you could not walk into
weren't
anyone
having
else's house and just not say thank you.
There should be
for
more of
inviting
that.
me.
I think we need to
so.
spread
I think
that.
politeness is really important. I feel like this generation could use a little bit more, like they're not at the center of everything, that kind of thing. Remember,
This generation's eating Tide Pods, so we're just one
Yeah.
step at a time.
Any
right
Tide
now.
Pod material tonight at the Funny Bone in Westport?
You guys just ruined that.
That's a correct
Thanks
answer.
a lot.
Just laugh that off. What else is going up? So you have the pilot coming. People are going to go see you at Funny Bone all weekend long. What else do we need to know about? Have you made any other
the
podca-
Netflix special will be out in March.
March?
It's a half hour.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's so great.
It's a season. It's a show, a series. That's the word I'm looking for. On Netflix called The Stand-Ups. So
Yeah.
I'm doing a half hour
You
special
had,
with that.
What, Nate Bargatze did one
love
with
Nate
Nikki
so much. He's so
Glazer,
funny.
and yeah, that's a fantastic. That's such a good time for you to be doing what you're doing right now, because they keep putting out great stuff.
Nate is so hysterical, and I felt so bad because we were doing this festival, Bonnaroo. Nate,
Little up and coming festival.
yeah,
Very cute.
So Nate Bargatze's in this the thing, and I was excited to see him again. So I was like, "Let's have a beer," and he's like, "No, I'm good." I'm like, "Come on, man!" And he was like, "No, I'm all right for now," And then I just get a beer, open it, and I'm like, "Come on, Nate, we're having a beer, man." And then so we did, and then I think he had like 12 more, and then he told me later that he had been sober
Oh no.
for like a year before that. And I still feel actively guilty about this because he kept
should.
being like, "I'm fine." I'm like, "Nate, come on, man, you're not fine. You need a brew, bro."
It's
I'm like,
Feinstein.
"No, I didn't know he was sober." Yeah.
You said Bonnaroo, by the way. Is that, as far as playing anything else is in front of a crowd, is that how is working that crowd?
Is that an active audience?
I'm about to say, I'm curious, how do you, as a comedian, how do you break that wall, if you will? It seems like there'd be a ton of distractions in that
It's
environment.
crazy. You're outside in a tent. It's not ideal to perform in tents. I prefer walls to tents. Really,
Funny Bone,
outside
St. Louis
things
has
in general,
walls.
like wind isn't
Yes.
funny. You don't want a wind to disrupt
Right.
your dumb sentence.
An errant hawk flying through. Like, you don't want that
Row of people
happening.
just ODing in front of you. I would
Yeah.
imagine that would be very difficult to perform in front of.
That could be very strange.
I
Everybody,
love those festivals though because we get to hang hard. I'm going to keep disrupting you every
I
time
know.
you try to
We can
finish
sit
it.
here and talk
Yeah.
for 2 hours, but just don't talk shit whenever you leave. You're like, those guys wouldn't let me leave, right?
Ireland. We had so much fun in Ireland this summer.
What happened
It was
in Ireland?
Christy Stefano and Colin Quinn and Sam
Oh,
Morrell.
my
Colin Quinn in Ireland. Do they treat
We
him
had
like
we
royalty
had a
there?
blast.
That is-
Oh my
Yeah.
Now
gosh.
that should be filmed.
I was going
Film
to say,
that next
we
time.
just throw a GoPro on that and just keep it on all of you for the next one. That's
We had
fantastic.
so much fun. We went to some sort of like royal museum in Ireland, and Colin's like explaining things because he's like, you know,
He's
the
that guy.
He's like, yeah, the only adult in the room. And then
Hey, listen up. Listen
we were
up.
like in some important like royal dining room in this museum, and Christy Stefano farted like so loudly. It was so horrifying. Just like, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. It was like in the middle of this museum, and it was like a royal something of some dining room of some sort of historic
Yeah.
significance. And he goes, what? I have children. I'm like, what is that? How is that ever a reason? That
Right.
means
In
it's
the
a reason
middle
you
of
shouldn't
of a
do
lecture of the potato famine.
that. What
like,
do you want? I got a daughter.
I don't think that's
He'll say things that I'm just like, what are you? He was like, I think we were talking about something about this house in the woods. He's like, nah, I don't like nature. I'm like, who doesn't? Nah, I don't mess with nature.
okay.
It's scary out there.
Yeah.
Never cared for nature.
Gotta film that one next time.
I think that's what I'm
Level of profound ignorance you've got to respect. I love Chris because he just knows he's trash. Nah, never cared for nature.
no nature.
Nah, I don't buy all that nature stuff. Not into it. But we
I'm
had
gonna
so
say,
much fun.
I love that, and I love that about you. I've seen you in your element. You're very kind, very nice to people that come up. So you guys can go say hello at Funny Bone this weekend. What's let's end on a funny note. What's a crazy interaction you've had with a fan in the past year that didn't result in like fear? Have you had anything happen? I mean, because you run in these circles where it's like there's levels to, like you said, being the public being aware of you. You're around Amy Schumer a lot. You're around people who are just literally people go nuts over when they see. Has anything ridiculous happened at a show outside of
I had a soft taco
playing?
thrown at me once, and
for
I
you.
talked about it on the radio, and it was like a soft taco kind of hit my like chest area, and then just sort of fell down. It's kind of smeared down. It was like a saddest fall. So
Pay
it
extra
rolled-
for that on
What
porn.
led to it
Rolls
being
off
thrown?
me.
Was it just someone drunk?
No, it was performing at a college at the Culinary Institute of Las Vegas. I'm not name dropping, but I've made it. All right, I have made it, and I want to thank my family and the Mox brothers. But
She thanked
I've made
every
it.
chef on her way out. From the,
and I couldn't have done it without you, Daddy. But so anyway, this taco fell off me, and then I went on the. He was annoyed. It was a student, sober. He was annoyed because I was performing in front of the microwave that he wanted to use to microwave his
Shut up.
taco, and so he threw it at me because I was merely an impediment.
What?
I was less a show and more of an impediment to him microwaving his soft taco. So people were.
and look, you're sitting here today, so screw you, soft
And
taco
look at me
guy.
sitting here in this unfinished basement. Speaking of rape rooms, look at me now. But anyway, so I was on the radio talking about getting the soft taco thrown at me.
Right.
And then a man came to my show
No.
with a taco. Kind of hands shaking. He's like, I've got something, I heard your story. And it was very unstable.
I don't like
And then he
Gallagher now
handed
as
me the
audience
taco and he's like,
participation.
open it up. And inside that taco,
Go
there
on.
was a little note that said, will you marry me? And today I would like to say that we are a homily.
So beautiful.
What
What a beautiful story.
Together.
Been the best 14 years.
At home, you'll see I'm holding it up. I'm worth it.
You are worth it. Rachel, thanks for coming
Thank
by.
you,
It's so
Rachel,
great
so
to have you
Thanks,
back in St.
guys.
Louis.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you later.
I love you, America.